We truly live in the golden age of indie video games, where AAA keeps delivering overall good, but let's face it, stale remakes of games we have played before. Indies keep coming out throughout the whole year, putting up some of the fiercest competition I have seen on the scene in years. Another definite proof of that is Mullet Madjack, first-person shooter roguelite by Hammer 95 Studios, a Brazilian three-person team that delivered a banger. Mullet Madjack is incredibly stylish, engaging, and it gets your blood pumping. Long story short, it's great, even though the story mode is incredibly short. This is the kind of mindless fun that I turn to video games for in the first place. This is just a game that oozes fun. The basic premise is that you have 10 seconds to live, and each normal kill adds a number of seconds to this timer. The number is determined by your chosen difficulty, so it can range from forgiving to downright brutal. Then you get additional seconds for headshots or pushing enemies into environmental hazards, and additional seconds for making combos of rapidly taking down enemies in a sequence. The timer is also your life bar, because every hit just takes some seconds away from it. Again, the time loss scales with difficulty, so you are trying to fly through levels, scoring precision kills, but also you need to realize when it's time to go a bit slower, because getting close and personal with that shotgunner is a surefire way to flatline your timer and send your ass back to the beginning of the stage. This is where the roguelite aspect comes into play. Every floor you finish awards you one of these upgrades. You know, a different weapon, or a weapon upgrade, or some kind of unique ability that makes stacking up these seconds easier. The catch is that every single chapter of the game is comprised of 10 floors. The 10th is always the boss fight. If you die at any point, you are sent to the beginning of the chapter. The only way to save your progress is to beat the boss and unlock the next chapter. The gameplay is incredibly fluid, intuitive, and first and foremost, fun. Flying through each room like a madman that you clearly are, leaving behind a trail of gore limbs and shattered glass just feels like an awesome power fantasy. But before you get to do that, you will most likely need to adjust to the game's ebb and flow. The game is quite challenging at first, but it just gets easier with each try, and your floor times will keep getting lower and lower. But even as you improve, the game keeps you on your toes by introducing completely new upgrades and enemy types in later chapters. It's very engaging for the entire runtime, but I think some of you know what I'm about to say. It's not perfect. The first issue is the bosses. They feel a tiny bit too slow for me personally. All the gameplay is super dynamic with split-second decisions, and then suddenly when you get into a boss encounter, it slows down to a crawl, taking you out of the experience completely. Doesn't help that the second half of this game is mostly gag or non-boss bosses that feel really anticlimactic. This sort of thing just really stands out like a sore thumb when the rest of the experience is so good. Another complaint that is echoed through many reviews of this game is that the campaign is rather short. It can be beaten in as little as 2 or 3 hours easily, but I would argue it's one of those games that really has options that are just begging to be explored further after one or even multiple playthroughs. I personally beat the story mode 3 times total on different difficulty settings, and got into the floor 30 in the endless mode to grab all the Steam achievements for this game. This took me roughly 7.5 hours. This is good enough for me personally, given the fact that I paid $15 for this experience on a 25% sale. I could and probably will keep going just to check how high I can get on the endless tower, but I can absolutely see how at some point soon in the future I will be completely done with the game, and it will be like a happy little memory floating in my mind palace. less. So if 20 bucks for roughly 8 hours of content doesn't sound right for you, then wait for some deeper discount, I would say. You set the price that is right for you and no one else. Speaking a little more on the free story playthroughs I did, it's wild to me, but each and every one of those felt completely different. The first one was just story mode on normal difficulty. The second one was on hard mode for an achievement. And this one I definitely enjoyed the least, because this is where the frustrating roguelite elements come into play the most. When you die on the 8th or 9th floor or the boss of that chapter, you absolutely just wasted all that time getting to that point, and it feels fucking miserable in the moment. In the grand scheme of things, it's really not that bad. I mean, the campaign is short, even if you die a lot in your playthrough, but it just stings when it happens, you know? And it often took the wind out of my sails. If I ever lost a run, I would just quit and then do something else before coming back another day. But that can easily be mended by lowering the difficulty. No shame in that. Just like I was saying, beware if you set out achievement hunting in this game. Another thing about hard is that there are very few tactics that are viable at this difficulty, which makes the game extremely stale. I completed every single floor with a katana, because it completely bypasses the no time awarded restriction of this difficulty. Cutting an enemy down is a completely separate category that will always award you time. Not to mention that there are specific katana only upgrades that reward you even more time, and an absolutely busted upgrade that lets you reflect enemy shots if you time the swing right. But the best tactic I found was literally just turning my brain off and mashing left click, focusing solely on the movement and pushing enemies into hazards, which is pretty mindless. I heard a shotgun can easily break hard mode too, but I honestly got wiped while I was trying it. Katana got my back though. And my third playthrough was done with the unique no timer accessibility option. This turns your timer into a regular health bar, alternating some of the upgrades into completely different ones in the process. This accessibility option is probably the closest you can get to turning this game into a good old regular boomer shooter. The problem is, enemy damage and such is locked to the lowest difficulty setting, which gameplay wise was extremely boring. Wish this thing was a modifier on top of the difficulty, but oh well, let's not get too greedy, we can't have it all. Nonetheless, I so appreciated this particular playthrough because it was super fun to not worry about the time and get a good look around the environment. Some of the jokes hidden there were hilarious. There's also a unique retro-inspired game unboxing activity you can access from the main menu, which is also fun to do. You know, poking fun of things like introducing the story in the manuals that are just completely absent from games nowadays. Then there's the endless mode, which is just, you know, the endless mode, where you lose a second from your max timer for every 10 floors beaten. It's pretty basic, but it does its job. The devs have been pretty proactive since the game's release, and there is another endless mode in development, so it's not like the game is not going to receive any more content. But for my money, what's already there is worth it regardless. Besides the gameplay, the aesthetics of Mullet Madjack are obviously what sets it apart from the rest. The game does an astounding job of emulating the anime aesthetics of the 90s, which tickles my nostalgia funny bone, so I can't help but love that direction. This combined with the many choices that invoke that 80s nostalgia, I mean, Mullet is right there in the title, it gives you a pretty spicy mix. The enemy designs are dope, especially the bosses. The environments are beautiful and easy to read. You might have noticed it already in my reviews, but it is much easier for me to talk about things I don't like, even in the experiences I do like overall. That's why I don't even know what to say about how Mullet Madjack looks, because it just looks so fucking good. plain and simple. I also love the occasional animated cutscene you run into during the story. Most of them are stylized for that 2D 90s anime look, but sometimes that early 3D CGI look comes up and I absolutely fucking love it, man. It's so nostalgic. The soundtrack just mamas my mia. It's like when the moon hits the pie. It fucks. It comes. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Long story short, the game's just goddamn fun. The whole way through. The game also strikes a wonderful balance between having a conclusive story and being replayable. So no matter if you want to pick up a game, finish the story and move on, or just want a roguelike experience you can keep playing over and over, there's something for you here in the world of Mullet Madjack. One of the most stylish games of 2024. Easily. I gladly give Mullet Madjack an 8 out of 10. It's so worth the money the dev is asking for it. And that's it for my review of Mullet Madjack. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself, you know. Like, comment and subscribe if you want to, or don't if you don't want to. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one.